Good afternoon, everyone. It's particularly a joyful thing for me to be able to see some of our current students and a few more of our staff and faculty that I don't get to interact with in my normal Zoom calls as we're all getting used to right now. So I want to actually congratulate you for being willing to take a step like this. This is the first time, as you heard, that we've done a virtual Inviso visit weekend. And I am encouraged to see that there's so many of you that are participating. Quite frankly, that willingness to take a risk and to be a part of something different and new and unusual and be willing to adapt to the environment is a tremendous characteristic, and it's one that speaks highly of you. So as you heard in the introduction, I started my affiliation with King's as a King's dad, and I was still on active duty when our oldest daughter, Jessica, came to King's back in 2012. And over the course of her 4 years and my wife and I's involvement on the Parents Association, we got to know the staff and the faculty a little bit better, and frankly got to know the city a little bit better, and just fell more deeply and deeply in love with the mission and the people that are a part of the King's College. And so that's really what I just want to take you through a little bit. I recognize that as a dad, as a parent of 3, the search for your college experience can feel absolutely overwhelming. Whether you know this or not, there are more than 4,000 2-year or 4-year institutions in North America. That's a lot of schools, and it's difficult to weigh which one may be the one that you want to invest your time and your treasure and your effort into. And so what I'd like to do is offer you a way of maybe thinking about that, and then talk to you about how King's might play into that. So oftentimes when I'm asked a question of this type, and it's usually in the terms of a college decision or potentially a professional decision, I'll bring up 3 criteria that I think make a difference. So the first of those is, what do you anticipate your experience at that institution is going to be? The second is, how are you feeling about the geography, the actual place that institution is located? And then the third is, what do you anticipate that institution is setting you up for next? So it's the experience, the location, and the potential. And so as I think about those criteria and I apply them to King's, what I would point to is, and you've heard it expressed so well already from both the staff and from our student ambassadors, the experience at the King's College is one that is unique in many ways. So first, we are an unabashedly Christian college. We have a very deep love for God's word and how that impacts every part of who we are and how we behave and conduct ourselves. And so in every way, in the classroom, in mentoring conversations outside the classroom, everything that you're going to experience at King's as a student is going to be from that Christian worldview, whether or not you are a Christian. You just need to understand that that's the environment that you're stepping into and is a part of. Now, that doesn't mean that you need to be a Christian to come to King's. It doesn't mean that you can't challenge your professors about why they believe a certain thing from a Christian worldview. In fact, I will speak on behalf of our faculty when I say many of them look forward to those conversations the most. Those are things that very much energize King's. The other element that I want to make sure that you're familiar with is that politics, philosophy, and economics core curriculum. That's another commitment that we have. And that 3-fold approach to solving problems just means that you're going to have a much more robust understanding of the nature of a problem and the implications of policy decisions that might actually solve that problem or potentially hinder progress in a solution along those lines. So you need to have confidence that regardless of what major you're going to approach at King's, the first 2 years, that foundational time frame as you're approaching King's, is going to be in that politics, philosophy, and economics arena. And we think that that sets an absolutely foundational baseline for any area that you plan to study afterwards. So the second of the criteria that I mentioned, the idea of the location. New York City is not for everybody. We know that. The city is a place that has a tremendous amount of energy, and it's very interconnected, and we love that. But it's an adventure to come to New York City, both in the positive ways and also in the ways that you're going to find yourself challenged as those who take on adventures do. It's not a completely safe environment in every possible way, like some more traditional institutions that might be out, further away in a more rural setting, perhaps. But for some students, for the right students, this environment is just energizing, and the opportunities that are around. I loved Brent's recounting of how he got his internship, an internship that didn't exist. Nobody else has ever held that internship, but he wanted it. He figured out how to network toward it. Because King's is where we are, we're able to interact. I know Rich Lowry personally, for example, from National Review. We're able to interact with those folks, and we're able to make something happen. I love that. That is the prototypical New York story. And so the geography matters. The idea of shopping for yourself and getting yourself uptown and downtown on the subway and to and from church on your own. Yeah, absolutely. That is all part of the King's experience, and we embrace that. We don't shy away from it in any way, shape, or form. That is very much part of what makes King's special and valuable, because as you heard from Annie Mae, when you graduate from King's, you have already got a tremendous head start on adulting, if you will, because you've been doing it for 3 or 4 years already while you've been a student at King's. The final thing I'd point to is, what does King's set you up for next? Or what is any institution that you're considering setting you up to next? So that potential. So at this point, I get to sort of unveil a little bit of unknown information. Brent was quite correct in what he told you about 98% of King's graduates within 6 months of graduating from the college are either in full-time employment or full-time graduate programs. And that's tremendous, 98%. The national average, when those figures were calculated and gathered, was 81%. And so you can see King's is far and away on the high end of what's possible there. Except just when I'm thinking, 98%, that's pretty good, not much room for improvement. This year's numbers just came out last week. And it turns out last year's class was at 99%. So still well above the national average. And they're working in places like Disney, and they're going to graduate programs at Columbia and Harvard and Chicago Law School. These are enviable opportunities that King's grads are well prepared for and embracing. And so in the 3 areas that I mentioned, the experience of being at a place, the geography, the location of being at that place, and then what that place provides you in terms of potential, I love being able to tell the story of King's. It's something I'm passionate about. It's something that I've seen unfold in my own family, with my oldest daughter. And so I feel like I can speak to it from a number of levels. And I enjoy having the opportunity to do that. So thanks for being a part of this conversation. I'm going to wrap it up before we go to Q&A with maybe one other approach you might consider to this decision. And is King's the right college for you? And I'm just going to lean into my military experience, if you'll forgive the analogy, but you go to what you know, right? And so I would ask, just in your imaginations, have you ever gone to a recruiting fair, a military recruiting fair, where all the services are recruiting for their services? And what you'll find if you've been to one is, the Army is going to have a table, and they're going to be sitting there with maybe a model truck or a tank on the table, and there's going to be a couple of very well-presenting soldiers, right? I mean, the kind of folks that you would think to yourself, boy, I never want to have to go to war, but if I do, I want to go with them because, they've just got their act together, right? And right next to the Army is going to be the Air Force table, right? And the Air Force is going to have, we're going to have, an airplane there, an F-22 or something, and maybe a satellite, because we do a lot in space and cyber. And we're going to have a couple of our sharpest airmen sitting there, and they're going to be in their dress blues, and they're going to have great haircuts, and they're going to talk to you about the core values of the United States Air Force: integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all we do. And they live the part. And right next to the Air Force table is going to be the Navy table. And at this point, I have to admit, I'm always a little jealous of the Navy whites, because those are great looking uniforms. There's just no arguing that. And they're going to have a model of maybe a submarine or an aircraft carrier sitting there, and they're going to talk about independent action and the global commons and defending and the same. And they're going to be sharp. They're going to be right on top of their game. But then next to the Navy, Army, Air Force, Navy, right next to the Navy is going to be the United States Marine Corps. And the Marines, they don't even show up with a table. I mean, so the Marines are unique in the way they approach recruiting, right? They show up with a pull-up bar. And there are two Marines, one standing on either side of that pull-up bar. And, when they went shopping, apparently Under Armour was out of the tan t-shirts that were in their size, because these t-shirts are a couple of sizes too small, obviously. And these Marines just look the part, right? And they're standing there and they're challenging each person to come over to the pull-up bar and see what they're made of. How many pull-ups can you do? And even when you get to the end of that, the Marine is going to say, "Are you sure you don't have one more in there?" And they're going to challenge you to do more than you think. Now, if you've ever been to one of these things, you know that the line is not at the Army table. It is not at the Navy table. It's not at the Air Force table. It's at the pull-up bar. And here's the analogy. King's is the pull-up bar of Christian colleges. We aspire to something unique and special. We are right in the heart of what's been referred to as the capital of planet Earth, the crossroads of the world, as Times Square is known. We are right in the midst of all of it, and we get to champion the cause of Christ. We get to provide you an just top tier education. It's the education that I would have aspired to had I known about King's when I was your age. And we get to send you out into the world good, brave, and ready. And so we're able to deliver on that mission every day, every graduating class. And we see the results of that. And we get to hang out with our alumni when they come back and visit with us and tell us stories. And we get to share in their successes. And that's a special thing about King's. And so if I could, at this point, let me just pause. We've got a few minutes left, and I want to see what questions I might take from you. So Grace?
Hi. Okay, so I have a few questions. The first one is, when was the moment you knew your daughter should go to King's? So what was that deciding factor?
Oh yeah. Well, I remember this moment. It was that "when did you know" moment. And so we were visiting during an Inviso visit weekend with Jessica, and I like New York City. I liked it then. I didn't like it as much as I like it now. It's really grown on me since we've moved here. And at the time, the King's College was in the Empire State Building. So that was a pretty iconic location. That was pretty neat. We've gotten too big for that space. So we had to find another location, which is where we are now in the financial district. But I wasn't completely overwhelmed with the Empire State Building. It's just a building and things like that. What hooked me, hook, line, and sinker, actually was the class that we got to sit in on. So as a family, our daughter wanted to study media, culture, and the arts. And so we sat down in Dr. Harry Bleetler's Arts and Ideas class that day. And art was not my area of interest as an undergraduate. So I thought to myself, here's an hour and a half of my life I'm never going to get back. And it was 5 minutes into his lecture, and I was scrambling for something to take notes on because it was just fabulous. It was great. And so I can remember walking out of Dr. Bleetler's class and turning to my daughter and saying, I don't care whether you get to come to King's. I want to come to King's. Little did I know what God had in store for us as a family. So, here we are.
That's great. Dr. Bleetler is actually on the faculty panel later, so they'll all get to see him.
That's awesome. Great.
Yeah. So the next question I have is, with the core curriculum having a heavy set in PPE, is the PPE major just more of an in-depth look at the core curriculum?
Yeah. Boy, is it just a more in-depth look at the core curriculum. I would tell you, if you're serious about studying politics, philosophy, and economics, there's no end to where that stops. And so being able to unpack in more nuance and more detail and add more history and to the politics, philosophy, and economics curriculum, I don't know where you would ever tire or come to the end of it and just say, oh, I've had enough. There may be some disciplines where you feel like perhaps you've got it all figured out. But when it comes to integrating those three, that in that interdisciplinary, cross-functional way, and then considering what's happened in the past and what the results were, and then imagining how those same types of decisions might influence the future, there's no end of where you can go with that. That will hold your attention and interest for all 4 years. I feel certain.
Yeah, that's awesome. Next, I think we have time for 2 more. So this one is, what are some of your favorite things about King students? What's something that sticks out to you?
Yeah. To be honest, the fact that we're a small enough school that we actually get to know them. I big grin on my face when I saw our student ambassadors on the Zoom call earlier, even while I was muted on my video. But just, I've gotten to know Annie Mae. I've met her mom. I've gotten to know Brent. I see him in the hall. I mean, the fact that we are small enough that we can legitimately spend time getting to know each other and to have conversations, that students are in my inbox and, I'm interacting with them on a regular basis. Just that genuine opportunity to invest in each other's lives. That is far and away my favorite part about the community at King's.
That's great. And then my last question, it also has to do with academics. Someone's just asking about, how's the business program? Can you talk about that maybe a little bit? They'll get to hear from the faculty as well, but maybe from you can talk about them, since they probably won't want to talk about themselves necessarily and brag on themselves.
Yeah, sure. So, of that 99% that I pointed to here in our most recent graduate survey, business and finance is far and away the highest percentage of the industries in which our students, former students, now graduates, are currently working. You cannot find a more relevant location to study business and finance than the King's College in New York City. We have a classroom that literally looks out on the New York Stock Exchange. We are plugged in with business and finance professionals all over this city. One particular supporter of the college has started a Faith in Financial Services program, for example, in which he's brought together more than 400 current professionals in that industry, and King's students and faculty are a part of that community. There is no more relevant place to study business or finance. One of our professors, Professor Don Fotopoulos, has written a book not on entrepreneurship, but on how to sustain a business once you've created a business. We love entrepreneurs. That's great. And we have classes that teach that and all those things. But Professor Fotopoulos has taken it to a whole nother level, wherein she knows that 80 to 90% of small businesses fail within the first 6 to 7 years. And so she wants to tackle that problem. It's a real world problem. We're going to see a lot of that, frankly, as a part of the COVID-19 response, I think. And so one of the first steps that Dawn took is she wrote a book called Accounting for the Number Phobic. And I thought, man, what a clever title, because that's just going to resonate with so many business leaders. And sure enough, it has. It's been translated into Spanish. It's been translated into Chinese. Federal Express brings her around to as a keynote speaker at business conferences that they host. And that book was recently named as one of the top accounting books of all time, not just in 2019, but of all time. That's the caliber of colleague that I have at the King's College and that you'll be studying from as a student at the King's College.